Right, let's just get straight into it. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're breaking down a truly unprecedented shift in the tech landscape. I mean, just a short time ago, the US government made the absolutely stunning move to completely shut down and then selectively gate access to Anthropic's frontier AI models. We literally went from open developer access to a full-blown national security standoff almost overnight. So today, we are unpacking exactly what happened with the Claude Mythos 5 model, what it means for the global AI supply chain, and honestly, most importantly, what this means for the code running in your environments right now.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the Mythos 5 release, the new regulatory regime, the impact on enterprise workflows, navigating the API changes, and finally, a developer action plan. Let's jump right in.
Part 1. The Mythos 5 release, from shutdown to whitelist. Okay, to really understand where we are right now, we've got to look back at this intense, 2-week standoff that brought the entire AI world to a screeching halt. The government abruptly shut down access over some severe national security concerns, specifically, the potential for frontier models like Mythos 5 to be used in military applications, autonomous weapons, and domestic surveillance. And the timeline here just brilliantly illustrates how fast this all moved. I mean, 14 days from a total ban to a functioning whitelist, that has got to be a new land speed record for government bureaucracy, right? On June 12th, a broad export ban hits, cutting off access to both Mythos 5 and its cousin Fable 5. Then, after mid-June's intense daily talks between the government and Anthropic, the Commerce Department drops a directive on June 26, lifting the ban, but only for a specific whitelist. And then boom, 2 days later on June 28th, Anthropic restored Mythos 5 to its approved partners, while OpenAI actually executed a parallel move, releasing GPT 5.6 to a short list of its own government-approved partners.
Moving on to Part 2, the new regulatory regime, the government as gatekeeper.
That June 26 Commerce Department directive didn't just, turn the service back on, it completely rewrote the rules of the game. We have officially transitioned from a blanket ban to a tightly controlled government-mandated whitelist. And the government's stance is explicitly clear now. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick wrote in his letter to Anthropic's Chief Compute Officer, Tom Brown, saying, "I have determined that appropriate safeguards are in place to permit certain trusted partners to access the Claude Mythos 5 model." This letter right here establishes the U.S. government's direct regulatory authority over exactly who gets to distribute and use frontier AI models. Washington is literally the gatekeeper now. And what's actually wild here is the scope of that initial gatekeeping. Over 100 U.S. organizations and institutions, and we're talking numerous Fortune 500 firms and government agencies, were added to what's known as Annex A of the directive. It's simple. If your organization is on that list, your API access was restored. If not, well, you remain locked out.
But there is a massive compliance detail here that engineering teams absolutely need to understand, and it's called a deemed export restriction. Traditionally, U.S. regulations treat the sharing of restricted tech with foreign national employees as an export to their home country. So the crucial takeaway here is that this new directive specifically lifts this restriction for the entities on Annex A. That means foreign national engineers working for those whitelisted teams can now actually access Mythos 5. This removes a huge compliance friction point for distributed global engineering teams who were frankly terrified their international talent was just going to be permanently locked out of the codebase.
Part 3. Impact on enterprise workflows, the architectural shift.
Because the selective gating, it fundamentally alters how we actually architect enterprise AI solutions. We've got to contrast the status of these two models. On one side, we have Mythos 5. It's whitelisted for Annex A entities. And yeah, it's highly capable, but it comes with those acknowledged cybersecurity risks. On the other side, we have Fable 5. And ironically, even though Anthropic heavily guardrailed Fable 5 against cybersecurity and biology queries, like it outright refuses to answer them, it remains restricted. So think about that. The risky model is whitelisted for approved partners, and the safe model is just locked down in a holding pattern. If your stack happens to rely on Fable 5 for high-volume, lower-cost workloads, you're still waiting for the green light. And hey, for those of you building on the Claude platform, remember that this government oversight applies across the board, the whole shebang. It impacts both the direct messages API endpoints, where you're managing the conversation state yourself, and the fully managed agents infrastructure, where autonomous agents operate in stateful sessions. Whether you're running high-throughput inference pipelines or complex autonomous agent orchestration, you are operating under this new regulatory umbrella. All right, Part 4, navigating the API changes. The code-level realities. So what does a regulated API actually look like in your config files?
Well, it's pretty different, and automated systems might actually break if you aren't prepared. In a standard developer experience, you're used to unified routing, standard rate limit headers for errors, and your SDK is just automatically retrying on transient errors, right? But in the new compliance experience, API routing requires explicit version pinning, because Anthropic is maintaining separate endpoints for whitelisted versus restricted tiers. And instead of standard rate limits, unauthorized attempts are going to hit a 403 forbidden error, with compliance metadata baked right into the payload. But here's the big one. SDK clients that usually auto-retry need to be explicitly configured to halt on these compliance blocks. If you don't do that, you risk unnecessary token consumption and generating regulatory audit flags, and nobody wants that.
I literally cannot stress this enough. The whitelist is completely static right now. Organizations not on Annex A face a hard block until individual licensing processes resume. If you aren't an approved trusted partner, you should expect those 403 forbidden responses across the board. API rate limits, pricing tiers, and usage quotas are all likely to remain under tight government oversight until that whitelist actually expands. Which brings us to part 5, the Developer Action Plan, your immediate checklist. So, here is the immediate checklist engineering teams need to execute to restore their workflows safely and, actually stay compliant. Step 1, verify your organizational status. Check if your company or your parent entity is on that Annex A list. Next up, you've got to update your API clients and authentication flows. Test your SDK integrations against the new endpoints before routing any production traffic, because keys might rotate or require new headers. Crucially, audit your foreign national access. Make absolutely sure your international contractors fall under the new exemption and document it. You'll also want to monitor your Fable 5 fallback strategies. Since Fable 5 is still restricted, maintain your cache strategies or fallback routing. And finally, implement strict usage telemetry. Because of all this heightened regulatory scrutiny, you absolutely have to log all API calls and token usage to prove definitively that your outputs aren't being routed to restricted military or surveillance applications. Look, we aren't just building software anymore. We are building on government-regulated infrastructure. The days of permissionless frontier AI access have, at least for now, been replaced by trusted partner whitelists and compliance payloads. So I'll leave you with this question. With Washington now directly gating frontier models, how will your organization adapt its long-term architectural strategy to survive and thrive in this new era of regulated AI? Take these action plans back to your engineering teams and start adapting today. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.